Well, good morning and welcome. It's great to see so many people here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Shane Foster. I'm entering my 9th year as the head of school and calculating the other day my 32nd year in education. And I continue to enjoy every single moment of working with families, working with children, especially being in a school that allows you to have the opportunity to work with 3-year-olds all the way up to 18. When the 3-year-olds get a little bit much, you can go to the 18-year-olds, and when they get a little bit much, you can go back down to middle school. So my job here today is to give you an overview of where the school stands in 2016-17. I'm going to go through fairly quickly because to try to get 132 years of where we have been and where we're going in a short time period just isn't going to work. But the slides that you're going to see, I will be posting online for you, and you can go through them at your heart's content. If you've got specific questions that you'd like to direct after that maybe don't pertain to the group as a whole, I'm certainly happy to work with you. Let me start by saying or introducing to you the Associate Head of School, which is Judith Yount. Judith is at the back there. Judith has served as the lower school headmaster and the Associate Head of School for many years. And a newcomer this year, but somebody who's already hit the ground running because of his experience in other schools, is Mr. Chris English. And Chris is right behind you there as well. Chris's role is as the head of campus. Now, why do we have all of these administrators? Well, when I first came here, we were a little over 600 students. Now we opened on opening day, we're at 724. But we're actually educating about 1,500 students. And I'm going to go through and show you how that is. And what it also means is, how do we plan for the future? Now, I don't plan necessarily on going anywhere, but I also don't plan on getting hit by a truck. But if that was to happen, I need to make sure that we have a succession plan in place. I also need to make sure that we have a full and complete understanding of how the school has been operating. Again, when I came in back in 2008, the school was in somewhat financial crisis. We had lost a lot of students. You know what was happening back in 2008. If you look back at your mutual funds or your retirement, things just weren't going very well. We had to make some drastic changes without cutting programming, without cutting teachers, maintaining the excellence that Barstow was known for. And I always put this in, we are the oldest independent school west of the Mississippi, for those of you who don't know that. We have a rich history, not just in Kansas City, not just in the Midwest, but across the nation. And we're nationally recognized, and in fact, internationally recognized because of those things. So let's go through, and as I said, I'm going to go through here fairly quickly. I'm going to show you some of the projects that we do during the summer. They're not necessarily those fabulous things that you think, oh my gosh, this is so exciting, but they're necessary. So as you walk down into the 5th grade hallway, you can see that you could see that there was a big hole in the roof. And that's because as we started to replace the breezeway windows and they started to cut them out, they realized that that framework was actually holding up the roof. And so we had to stop. And so when you see the posts there right now, they are now holding up the roof. So it's perfectly safe, but it's those types of things which are unanticipated and unexpected that we have to prepare for. We also, right next to us, and if you turn around and you can wave to the camera at the back here, we are live streaming this or recording it and putting it on our BTVN website. This is the BTVN studio right next door here, and I hope at some point you will have a chance to go through and tour here. It's a state-of-the-art television studio, which is equivalent to anything that they're using at the University of Kansas right now. So our students who are getting training in these spaces could walk into the University of Kansas tomorrow and feel very, very comfortable in operating not only equipment, but in script writing, anything to do with putting a television program together. Now, one of my favorite places, especially if I just need a little bit of a break from my office, is to go down here to the early childhood area. And this is a wonderful space. For those of you who have children in the middle and upper school, and perhaps you didn't have a child start in the lower school and you haven't seen this space, do yourself a favor and go down there and take a look. This is not just because we want it to look cool. This is a learning space. Everything we do at this school is about learning. And we are able to go through and show the children how they ride bikes around here. You can see the lanes are marked. We've got different car washes there, the bank, all of these different things. And the teachers utilize these spaces as outdoor learning centers. And so it is an incredible place to go to, and thanks in large part to BPA donations. So we really appreciate that. We also take this as a little less structured play, but nevertheless, it is learning. It's about socializing children, having them learn to play. 3- and 4-year-olds, if you have a 3- and 4-year-old now, or you've had a 3- and 4-year-old, you all know about socializing your child. This is an area where we are able to do that successfully, and in a very exciting way. This is in the lower school pod. As we started to increase student numbers, we obviously have to increase some support staff. So we were able to take an area in the south pod and the north pod, I'm sorry, and put in office spaces. If you walk down there, you really wouldn't know it wasn't built at the time the school was built. It's been done very, very well. We also had to put in office spaces. And as I said, this may not be the most exciting things for people, but it's necessary to show you how we do spend our time when your children are on summer break. This is the head of campus's office. This is a testing room for admissions. We really have been looking for this space and we're able to make it. This is in the admissions suite by my office. The director of admissions moved her office, and this is how we have set the admissions office up right now. To try to create a more workable space for us. What we also did is we started to create a new alumni space for Ryan Taha, and HLC, the Hybrid Learning Consortium, which I'll go through and talk about in a moment. They have grown substantially. We now reach, or have the potential to reach, 80,000 students just alone in New York, because we are one of the providers for the New York State Association of Independent Schools. What does that mean for your child? It means if your child wants to take a class in Arabic, and we don't offer Arabic here at this school, but if they want to take a class in Arabic, we will put a class together through the Hybrid Learning Consortium, which we operate and run, and we will get students from all over the country, in fact, all over the world, to populate those classes. So it increases our opportunity. Hence the reason, though, we need more space. We teach here, in some cases, 7 days a week, all over the world. And there was a necessity to increase our space. This is a fairly dark slide. I'm sorry you can't see it, but this is sort of a soundproof room when we want to go in and just do recordings, because we do it both synchronously, which means live, just like I'm doing it right now, and then we do it asynchronously, where we will record and the students will watch it later. We also revamped our bookstore right over there, and Mona, I'm sure, would appreciate you going in and saying hi, maybe if you want to pick up a t-shirt or something like that as well, but it's right over there, and it's become far more of a productive space, more open space, and able to display what we are able to sell to the students. Now, I wanted to go through a little bit briefly and show you the admissions results. I mentioned we started with 724 students this year. We have a cap, meaning that once we hit, especially in K through 5, once we hit 51, we open another section if the numbers warrant it. Now, you'll see, for example, in grade 4, we have 34 students in that class. So we could only have 2 sections. In order to open a third section, for us to not just break even, but be able to populate that class successfully, we would need a minimum of 39 to 40. And the reason is, all the research tells us as educators that a small group, especially in lower school, 12, 10, 12, is not as successful as a class of 16 or 17 for socialization reasons, not just for the academic reasons. We're happy where we are. We do have a little bit more room in the lower school, but overall, I think we're doing remarkably well. And these statistics, if you were to take them and put them out nationally, which is what we do, we would see very, very similar things, with the exception of our preschool and pre-K. Those programs are doing remarkably well compared to the national norms right now. And we as educators, as heads of school, are all trying to work out what's happening. Why do we have that decrease? I mentioned the 4th grade class only having the 34 students. That has been a low class across the nation, that grade level. We don't know why. There's something in the water, I just don't know. We can't put our finger on it. Back when 9/11 occurred, we were able to track through. So at the time that those children would have been born going into school age, we're able to see a fairly dramatic decrease in enrollment in schools. We can't see that in our current fourth grade. Don't really know what that variable is yet. But this shows opening day numbers from 2008 on, and if you look at where we were, 2008, 2009, obviously fairly low, but we have successfully kept on increasing. Now, what does that mean? Are we going to keep on increasing and increasing and increasing? Absolutely not. I came from Virginia, where I was running a school of about 1,200 plus students, one of the top 5% schools in the nation, and I didn't particularly enjoy it. Simply because there are too many children. Independent schools, by their very nature, should be a community where we know each other. We can talk to each other. We can collaborate with each other. We do not want to be much larger than maybe 800 students, and that would mean we would have to very, very carefully cherry pick where those students go. We cap our classes right now, and we could be larger than we are, but we choose not to be because we don't want to lose what this feeling about Barstow is, why you send your children here. So our promise to you is always going to be that we are going to maintain those small class sizes. Sometimes in the upper school, we may have an elective that runs at 21, 22, but we also may have an AP physics class or an AP calculus class or an independent study class of 2 students. So it balances itself out. And this is just another graphic example of how we continue to increase. But that is going to stabilize at some point, and it's going to flatline in a positive way, but it's going to flatline because we can't just keep on increasing. We don't have enough seats for little bottoms to sit in, especially in our current dining hall setting. So we are already doing about 5 servings at lunchtime. And while that works well, we don't want to just increase just to say, hey, we're a big school. That's a mistake. And so it's one that we are going to avoid. Let's look at advancement. And I want to talk a little bit of advancement and how advancement is important. For every child that comes into the school, we have a deficit, a loss of between $2,000 and $2,500. So some of you are looking and saying, oh, I didn't know I got a $2,000 scholarship. You don't see it. We don't charge enough tuition in order to cover those costs. Well, why is tuition so expensive? Our top tuition this year is $19,225, and that's a lot of money, I know. How do we spend that money? We spend it on providing you with the best qualified teachers that are available, creating the most innovative programming that will give your children the opportunities to do whatever it is they want to do. We can't hang our hat anymore and just say, we've got nurturing teachers and we've got small class sizes. I think every school wants to say that. Not every school does it. We happen to. But that's not enough. What we want to do for your children, what I wanted to do for my child who graduated from here, is to provide her and to provide your children with an education second to none. That means that we hire people second to none. We put programming in place that is second to none. In fact, the programming that we have in place right now for your children is getting national and international recognition, and that's important. But let's talk about advancement. We have had an increase in how we fund the school. So I mentioned we have a loss of between $2,000 and $2,500, and for those of you in the business world, you're probably scratching your head saying, how can you run a business like that at a loss? Well, fortunately, the federal government says we can ask you for money, we can go out and get foundational support, and because we're a nonprofit, you're able then to receive a tax deduction. But how does the annual fund work? So what do we do with this money when it comes in? The money that is designated to the annual fund goes to offset that deficit. In fact, it pays it down. And then, of course, we have our programs that we operate globally, which bring in approximately $1 million in revenue. So in addition to our annual fund, these global programs, the campuses that we operate in China, the online program that we operate, brings in, along with our international students on campus, bring in about $1 million to the school. That is crucial to our school growth. I also want to make one other comment, because sometimes I hear, well, if we have an international student coming in, does that mean that we limit the number of students from Kansas City coming in? And the answer is absolutely not. We are first and foremost a school for students in Kansas City. But we are also a school that recognizes that your children will go to university or college and rub shoulders with people from many, many different walks of life and many different places. And if you haven't guessed already, I'm not American, I'm Australian. And, you know, it's one of those things that I've had this great opportunity. I grew up in a small little town, coastal town, in a place you've never heard of, in a state you've probably never heard of, Tasmania, of about 8,000 people. And here I am running a school in a city nearly 2 million people in the heart of the Midwest. And that's what we want to encourage. We want to engage your children with people from all over the world. But first and foremost, no child here is going to lose their place because we bring in an international student. But the international students are important not just because of revenue. We don't look at it like that. They're important because of what they bring to us as a community. Here's an example of what we do with our international students. And before I ask Ron to play this is a class that we run about every week. It will start up again in October. We call it, for want of a better word, a literary circle. And we have students and teachers from our campuses in China working with our students here in Kansas City. Ron, if you just go ahead and play that for me, please.
I just think not everything should have a very accurate answer, because sometimes you can use your heart to feel and to explain something. Like when you read a poem, I think it's good for you to understand with your heart instead of read the accurate definition or the explanation of this poem.
Well, I would agree with you.
So I think it's very important to try to find the explanation, but don't worry if you cannot. Yeah.
Okay, that seems fair. I think the point of learning to learn with your heart and let your heart guide you in some ways is a really good way to approach literature. I think oftentimes we worry about what it means rather than how it makes us feel. And one of the beautiful things about literature is that there doesn't have to be a right answer. It's okay if we disagree about what it means. It can also be, why do you like that poem? Well, because it made me feel really happy, or it made me very angry, or so I think that idea of feeling with your heart is crucial to understanding literature.
Boys and girls, today we're going to read a story called Eek! There's a mouse in the house. As you read the story, I want you to think about each animal and what it does. Are you ready?
Eek! There's a mouse in the house. Send in the cat to chase that rat. Uh-oh, the cat knocked over a lamp. Send in the dog to catch that scamp. Dear me, the dog has broken a dish, and now the cat is after the fish. Send in the hog to shoe that dog. Oh my, the hog is eating the cake. Sending the hog was a big mistake. Send in the cow. Send that cow now.
Mrs. Rudkin's first grade class. This is teacher Gwen's second grade class in Ningbo, China, at the Ningbo Haishu Hanbo School. And we would like to read the same book that you read us. Eek! There's a mouse in the house.
Eek! There's a mouse in the house. Send in the cat to chase that rat. Uh-oh, the cat knocked over a lamp. Send in the dog to catch that scamp. Dear me, the dog has broken a dish, and now the cat is after the fish. Send in the hog to show that dog. Oh my, the hog a cow. Santa, that's a cow now. Oh no! The cow is dancing with our mom, tending the sheep to make her stop.
Times 10 to the 11th. Okay. Over 364.25. Because that's how long it's taking to rotate. I want to do kilometers per hour. So right now this is in days, right? So to change it to hours. Oh, sorry. So this is in meters. The bottom is in hours or days. So to change it to hours, I know that there are 24 hours in one day. Right, so that's what I can multiply it by.
So once again, being able to utilize a form of technology that we have had available in our school for years, but be able to put it into practice as we're doing now, allows your children, because we just don't do this for Chinese students. We teach Latin to Australia as well as our students taking Latin from a teacher actually who's in Memphis. And so it connects kids all over the world and provides them with opportunities that they would not necessarily have. One of the other things that we do to engage your children and provide them with learning opportunities is our global education program. Sorry, let me go back there. Our global education program. And this pamphlet, which is out on the table outside, as you walked in, you will see that table to sign in. Please feel free to take one, and if we run out, we'll be sending you copies. But this goes through the trips that we have this year. So we have a trip to China, we have a trip to Costa Rica, we have a trip to our German school of Madrid, our Spanish school. We have a trip to Australia, we have a trip to Maui. So if you want to sign up for that one, it's pretty cool. Parents are allowed. Your children may not want you to go, but that's all right. Leave them at home and you take the adventure. And then a new one, we are just starting to work with a school in Argentina. So that's the important part. So that's it in a nutshell. I do want to spend a couple more minutes, if I have time, okay, talking a little bit about some important things that are coming up. Every 7 years, the school is accredited. We are accredited by two organizations. One is the Independent School of the Central States. And while that's important to us, it's more important to us for professional development. The University of Kansas, Boston College, University of Miami, they don't really care about ISACs. The one they really care about is called Advanced Ed, or used to be called North Central. We're accredited by both organizations, and when we give out diplomas at the end of this year, that is the stamp that the universities are looking for to say you are an accredited school. We are going into the process this year of writing the self-study. So basically it's a self-examination of everything we do at the school. If we say we teach Chinese, we say we teach Spanish, then we better actually do that. So we examine everything that we do, but it's really this sort of cathartic experience that allows us to examine who we are and do we need to make changes. So it's a self-examination, and many of our parents are going to be involved in helping us write that self-study, particularly the leadership of the BPA. That process will culminate with a visiting team of about 15 people from all over the Midwest descending on our campus in April of 2018. They will examine approximately 55 different standards that we have to comply with. And that sort of brings me to my next point. For those of you who are brand new parents, or for those of you who haven't heard this before, the school operates slightly differently than a public school governance model. We have the Board of Trustees who are up here, but the Board of Trustees have one employee, and that's me. They do not engage with faculty salaries. They do not know what faculty earn. The only person they know is me. They do not get involved in employment situations other than me. They do not get involved in any type of student discipline or curricula. Why? It's an ISACS accreditation violation. So they cannot be involved in day-to-day, which is very different than a public school board. And that's one of the big, big differences with independent schools. So our Board of Trustees, their responsibility is to hold the school in trust and to look long term. So we're talking about 5, 10, 15 years out. Does that mean that they won't talk to you? Jenny's always going to talk, aren't you, Jenny? You're always going to. So we have trustees who are here in this room, and they're always going to have conversations with you. But please understand, this is a very difficult thing because many of them are parents, and you're going to want to engage them about parent stuff. But sometimes you're going to have to say, sorry, you're going to have to go and talk to Shane or Judith or Chris because I can't get involved in that. It's not because they don't want to, it's not because they don't like you, it's not because they're being rude, it's just the way the structure's set up. Then there comes the head of school, and I act really in a public school model as a superintendent. Then we have the associate head, the head of campus, the division heads, department chairs, grade level coordinators, all the way down to the teachers. Which brings me to one of the important strengths of the school, which is we value you. We want you to engage in your child's learning. That's why we're not a school of 3,000. That's why I left Virginia and came to this type of school. So we want positive communication and collaboration. We also want to do that in an atmosphere of respect for each other. If you have questions, and I just mentioned the model that works its way down, if you have questions about what's happening in your child's classroom, the first place to go is not me. Because I'm, honestly, I'm in your child's classroom, but I'm not in there enough to know what's happening. The teacher. And if that then is not an experience that you are satisfied with, then you go to the next level, which would be the division head. And then you work your way up the chain to me. But that's where it stops, because you can't jump over to me or the board, because as I just explained, they can't get involved in that. But I want to make sure that we have the same goal in mind. We love your children just as much as you do. In fact, your children during the school year spend more time with us than they do with you. So we get to know them in a different way, but nevertheless, we get to know them in a setting where we want to encourage, we want to nurture, we want to challenge. And sometimes that challenge might involve a very difficult concept that may result in your child coming home being frustrated. Let's have a conversation about that. I'm a parent of 2 daughters, and even though I've done this a long time, one of the things that sometimes I will catch myself at is being a dad. And that's okay to be a dad, right? But sometimes kids just want to vent. And my daughter's sitting over there and she'll tell you, Dad, don't do anything about it. I just want to vent, all right? But as parents, we feel this obligation, to put on our armor and go marching in and protect our children. And that's fine. But let's make sure we always do that in a collaborative, community way. We're always going to have the opportunity to have a discussion, and sometimes it might mean that we have to agree to disagree on something, and that's fine. But let's make sure that we do that and engage at the appropriate steps, and I think that's really important. Your children are absolutely wonderful, and they model wonderful behavior, and that comes directly from you. We are looking forward to an exciting year as we move forward. We've already had so many exciting things happen. Certainly, if you have questions, we're always happy to address them. We thank you for what you do, not only as BPA, but also as parents, for trusting us with your children. That's an immense responsibility, one that we take very, very seriously, and we're excited for a great year. Thank you so much for your time.